So let's talk about modulating fluid temperatures, shall we?
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
So a little bit of an update on my 73 Club Cab. I don't know if it kind of shows up in the camera. There's a lot of dust under here. I haven't touched this truck for about 2 years now. Not since before I got deployed. And I'm finally getting back at it. I've had 1,000 other things to do. Anyway, so a quick review. I've got a 90 360 in here out of a pickup. Throttle body, fuel injected one. The truck has aftermarket air conditioning in it. I'm going to put air conditioning in it. So I'm going to put a factory style air compressor right here. I've got one. Got a couple that are good. Here is the like a 90 or late 80s, whatever it was, AC condenser. And then over here I have also a freshly painted factory transmission cooler. Problem is, they don't all fit at the same time. You know, radiator's not an issue, but because that's on the other side of the bracket. So I can have one or the other. I want to have both. So I'll show you what's going on. So the factory tranny cooler just about touches this center brace. And that doesn't leave enough room for this. It's like way off. So, and since the radiator's really not a factor, it's just kind of in here for now. But, so, and I've got this gap here. I can move this entire AC condenser, you know, rearward, you know, closer to this part of the bracket, and everything will fit. Because I need about 3/4 of an inch more gap here to get this tranny cooler in. I've got about an inch worth of gap here. So I'm gonna do later this afternoon, I'm gonna take this out, I'm gonna cut these brackets, shorten them up an inch, all 4 of them, and put it back in there, and hopefully everything works. Hopefully everything, you know, bolts in the way it should. And I did notice, standing here looking in my radiator, that's looking pretty gross too, so I'm gonna have to come up with a plan for that, because that's yeah, that's going to cause some overheating issues. It's really bad, which is odd because this is the radiator that came with in the truck that this drivetrain came out of. Didn't have any problems, but kind of look in there. That's yeah, that's pretty gross. So I'll have to fix that, work on that. Worst case scenario, I have another radiator that I can put in there. It's just, this one is already going. The other one's a nice aluminum one. I want to put that in a different project. Worst case scenario, aluminum one goes in here, whatever. So there, that's how close that is. So it's going to be close. I'm not going to have a lot of extra room in anything, but I think it'll fit. Just got to do a little tweaking. So it's all in there now. The radiator is just kind of sitting there, not really bolted in. But the tranny cooler, the AC cooler, which is a little beat up on top, I tried to straighten that out, but there's only about so much you can do on the top edge. Top edge doesn't do much anyway. So it's tight, but it's all in there. You can kind of see there's enough gap between everything. So here we go. Wonderful. So I've got my coolers in. My radiator just kind of sitting there. I have to get cleaned up before I actually bolt it down. And the next step is I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna mount up the factory wiring harness for the 90. Get everything in place here, and then the next step after that is to basically gut the dash on the inside so I can put the factory 90 harness in there, and then all the fun that'll be to hook up the new wiring harness to the old system in places. Some things will be relatively easy, other things are going to be, it's going to be a nightmare. I've got a 90 service manual coming, so if I didn't have that, I wouldn't even attempt to try it, just simply due to the fact that, you know, I got to know where the wires go and what's supposed to go where and whatever else. So I'll show. And then just looking a little longer term, since this obviously is not a fuel injected truck from the factory, but the engine and stuff is, I'm thinking I'm going to have to put a different fuel tank in. It just mechanically it would be easier to have the matched gas tank in from the 90 versus trying to come up with some sort of fuel pump to run off of that other tank. So if I do that, and I've got the cross members, there's cross members, you know, that are different in the 80s and stuff than the 70s, the way the fuel tanks mount. I've got those pieces. I've got 3 different fuel tanks. It's just a matter of, if I do that, I'm probably gonna have to take off the box, which I really don't want to, but I think long term that's probably the best solution to make this the most reasonably reliable, because otherwise I can put those cross members in without taking the box off, but then I'm doing everything on my back upside down, getting dirt and crap thrown in my face, and then trying to slip bolts and stuff into holes that may not necessarily line up that nice right off the bat. Or I take the box off and I can get at everything really easy, and maybe I even actually rivet those cross members back in. We'll see, that's a ways down the road, but for now, get that radiator cleaned up and then start throwing a wiring harness in here. Very cool. Well, I got a fair amount done. It's late in the afternoon now, so I got the main harness in. I got the engine side harness in and pretty much connected. I got a bunch of the vacuum lines and emission stuff hooked up, and I'm leaving all that in there because this is a fuel injected motor. I'm not gonna try to mess with eliminating certain emissions and that emissions just to make power, because A, it's not going to make that much of a difference anyway, and then I would have to change computers or reprogram, and nope, not going to happen. So I'll come out here later this evening, do a little more on it, but let's say I got a fair amount done. I got kind of straightened out where some of the other stuff is going. I did happen to break some vacuum lines. I think most of them go to an air pump that was never there when I got the thing anyway. So I'll have to check the factory service manual when I get it, verify that kind of stuff. Well, there's my progress. I got quite a bit done. Almost all my hoses are hooked up, minus one tranny cooler line. You can kind of see way down there, it's just flopping loose. That is because I need a different fitting, so I can get that hooked up. Here's the other end of it. They're not exactly bent as pure as they used to be or should be, but they're gonna work. Radiator is in. I ended up going with the aluminum one, the aftermarket one, because the other one, either through my effort to clean it up with acid, or I mean, either I discovered it or I created it, one of the two. Yeah, shit happens. What do you do? So there that is. And I think there was a lot of trial and error getting that radiator in there, because it's not made for that radiator support, yada yada yada, whatever. So I got her in there though, and yeah, I don't have a fan shroud in there. I wasn't gonna try to hold that in there and then try to dick with this radiator to get it to line up right. So I'll just take the fan off later. I think that'll be fine. That's easier than trying to take the radiator out, go through that whole ball of wax, because once it's in there, if that thing has to come out, there's gonna be some swearing involved. But I will worry about that if it ever happens.